Hey everyone, this is Berwin, the lead tutor from Belief Education, and in today's episode of Just Ask Belief, we will be looking at how to solve questions using algebra. Now before I get into it, I would hope to get your support for my channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below. And if you have any questions or topics that you wish to have me cover, do feel free to hit me up via the contact number found in the description. Now with that, let's get things started. Now, solving a question through the use of algebra, which I can like to call it algebraic solving. Okay, it refers to the process of using an algebra to represent an unknown within a question and thereafter seek to find the value of this unknown. Now, some common themes of question that you will come across, okay, would include those of speed, area and perimeter, volume, profit and loss, and angles, so on and so forth. Okay, this is definitely not an exhaustive list, but what we will be working on today will definitely help you build your confidence in dealing with any of them. Okay, there are two essential know-hows that we must have in order to solve with algebra. The first would be forming equations. Okay, and the second would be to manipulate, right, equations. Manipulating equations, all right. Okay, so my main focus for today in this episode would be to help you learn to form an equation. Okay, so and if you are unclear as to what an equation is, please do check out the video in the link right above, all right. So when it comes to an equation, the most essential component of it is what I call the connecting factor. Okay, let me write it down first. Okay, connecting factor. Okay, in short, let's call this CF, okay? Now, alright, so let me elaborate on this. An equation is made up of the left-hand side being equivalent to the right-hand side. Now, whatever that you intend either side, be it this or this, to represent, is actually known as the connecting factor. So, be it the left-hand side or the right-hand side, we call it the CF, okay? So, for instance, it can be the speed of the train, the volume of the tank when it's full, so on and so forth. Practically, it's the thing that connects the left to the right. So how do we go about finding it, right? I will share with you two of my top processes or methods in which you can engage in to identify the connecting factor and thereby forming your equation. Now, this method, the first would be that of identifying, which I put it short, identify key concept, and also the formula involved. Okay, the second would be to follow the story and connect the dots. Okay, alright, so let me highlight that these are not the only two ways of finding your connecting factors, okay, but rather it's something that has worked out for myself and my students, which I would want to share with you. Alright, so let me demonstrate how to go about applying each of these concepts, be it the identifying or following the story, by using some questions from these common themes, alright? Okay, so let's proceed to the first question. Okay, it's as such. The distance traveled by Singapore KL high-speed train is 300 km. If average speed of the train is increased by 20 km per hour, the train would arrive 15 minutes faster. Find the initial average speed of the train. Alright, for this, I will apply the first method. Okay, let's put in method number 1. Okay, which is to identify the key concepts and formula. A key concept is basically a topic that you have learned in math. For instance, the obvious one in this question would be that of speed, right? So, and hence the relevant formula, right, you can find would be that of what we always know. Speed equals to distance over time. Okay. To make things easier, it's good to list out the pieces of information that is required in the formula. So we have the distance is 300 km. Okay, the speed before, right? To us, we do not know. Let me denote this as S with a subscript BEF equals to a question mark because we do not know. The time taken before T, okay, is equals to unknown as well, right? So as for the speed after, let's have that. You can see that it's actually the speed before, right, plus 20, okay? And this is in km per hour, okay? So as for the time after, okay, T equals to, all right, it is actually the time before minus, because it is actually shorter, right, before. And since this is in hours, therefore the time before here is actually in hours as well, right? So therefore, I would write this as 1/4 because that is 15 minutes, right? Okay, so the formula itself is a good starting point for us to identify the connecting factor. So generally, the connecting factor can be any of these components over here within the formula, right? It can be the distance, the speed, the time, all right? And since we are looking for the initial speed of the train, which is this over here, we then can erase this and we shall use an unknown. Okay, let me erase it first. And denote it with X, all right? With that, we would have to use any of the other components as the connecting factor, all right? Any of these. So I would choose to go with the time after, okay? So that's where we are going to be using this equation, okay? So here is how we're going to go about tackling this. It is pretty much like putting pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. Okay, since time is equals to distance divided by speed, right? So we can find the time before by using this technique, right? So this would help us to get this piece of information over here, which is time before. So in the same fashion, we will use the distance, okay, to divide with the speed after in order for us to work out the other side of the equation, which is the time after. All right, great. So we have both the time after and time before in this manner, and that actually links up everything, right? Yeah. So with that, we are able to then put together our entire this equation. Okay. So let's make some space for us to work into the details. Give me a moment. Let's bring this up. Okay. Now we will start off with always denoting our unknown. All right. So let me first write down. We are going to do a setup as of moment. So we will start off with denoting our unknown. So which in this case will always be the one that we are looking for, and that would be the km per hour, be the initial speed, right, of the train. Okay. So with that, we shall move into mapping out or coming up with all the components required. Time before is equals to the 300 over X, which is in hours. And then we will have speed after is actually equivalent to X plus 20, right? Because that's the initial speed plus 20 km per hour. Okay. Then we have time after. We will have to work this out by using 300 divided by the speed after, which is X plus 20. So we have hours here. Okay. All right. So having both sides of the equation, right, we can then write it out easily. with the time after, which is 300 over x plus 20, being equivalent to the time before, 300 over x minus 1/4. And voila, we have the entire equation that we need. Alright, so this is where I will stop what I'm doing for question 1, because our main objective of this episode is to work on forming equations. So let's move forward and look at the next question and introduce to you the other thought process. Alright, okay, so for question 2, here we go. Katrina bought an equal amount of sweets and chocolates. The sweets were sold at 3 for $2 and the chocolates were sold at 4 for $3. He paid $5 more for the chocolate than the sweets. How many chocolates did he buy? Alright, for these, we shall make use of the second method. Okay, let me write it down. So method number 2, okay, which is to follow the story and connect the dots. Yes, correct. Okay, so this process can turn out to be more straightforward because we are going to use the connecting factor. We're going to identify it straight away at the start, which is actually the last piece of information that you can find in the question. Okay, so in our question, as you can see, the last piece of information is the one that I highlighted here. And this can be interpreted as the cost of the item or the difference in cost. Now, it's really optional as to what you choose to interpret it as long as it's relevant, right? So I will choose to go with cost. Let's put it as cost first. And I will choose to go with cost of items. And therefore, it is actually a cost of item between that of chocolate or sweets. Okay, so remember that we are trying to form an equation, so it can be any of these, right? Alright, I will choose to go with cost of sweets. Alright, so we have an equation where the left equals to the right. Now we will want it to be the cost of the sweets. Alright, so as suggested by the name of this method, we will follow through the question and find the components we require. Of course, we start off with denoting the unknown, which is the thing that we're trying to find. Okay, number of chocolate, right? Chocolate bought, yes. So the first key component we can work out based on the first part of the question is actually this, right? The cost of sweets is actually equivalent to the x over 3, which gives you the number of sets of 3s. Then we multiply these by $2, right? Which gives us 2x over $3. Great. So the information that we have from the third sentence allows us to work out the cost of the chocolate in the same fashion. Alright, so let's write down the cost of chocolate. Yes. Okay, it's equivalent to x over 4, which is the number of sets of 4s, and then multiply it by 3. Yes, that's 3x over $4. Alright, so once we have the cost of both items, we can then connect them by using the last piece of information, which is the cost of the sweets, right? And we know that the cost of sweets is equals to cost of chocolate minus $5, as chocolate costs $5 more than the sweets, right? Since we have all components required, we therefore can just put in the numbers and form up our equation. Alright, and that is where we have for this cost of sweets, 2x over 3 equals to 3x over 4 minus 5. And voila! That's it. Okay? Yeah, that's our equation. So this is how you follow through the story and comes out with the equation using the last piece of information as a connecting factor. Alright, so that's all from me today on Just Ask Believe, which we are focusing on forming of equations in order for you to use algebra to solve a question. Okay, so this is like very much like the part 1. So I hope that this comes in timely for you all, and I'll be working on more questions to cover the last important know-how, which is to manipulate the equations, right, to find your values. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, do check out our other episodes and our 1 minute to ACE series to work on your fundamentals. Till then, I'll see you. Ciao.